Okay, so I hope that went well. What can you check your writing for when you finished with it? You can check it for paragraphs. You know, that hopefully you've got that structure in there and the structure is sort of highlighted by the paragraphs. You can check it for punctuation. How secure are your sentences, for example? Full stops, capital letters, all that jazz. All right. What punctuation have you used in there? Right, it's a variety of punctuation. Is it accurate? Okay, take 5 minutes to look over your work maybe. You can pause here if you like, or if you'd like to ignore me and just crack on with the reading, then let's do that. Okay, the reading for this one is obviously a pair of extracts. There's a non-fiction piece, obviously both non-fiction, called The Village That Lost Its Children by Laurie Lee. So it's written 1 year after a devastating landslide in the Welsh village of Aberfan. And then there's a piece of 19th century non-fiction, that's the 1800s. It's called Earthquake in England, and it's from a newspaper article published in 1863 after an earthquake. So we're going to read through, okay, but it would be a bit pointless not looking at the questions first, okay. So what are our questions? Let's look through. Question 1 is about the first source from lines 1 to 21. So let's have a look at that now then. This is an extract from an essay written in 1967 called The Village That Lost Its Children by Laurie Lee. Aberfan was a small mining village in Wales. In 1966, many of its people, including children at a local school, were killed when heavy rain caused a landslide. The village that lost its children. Few people had ever heard of Aberfan until disaster struck it. It was just another of the small mining villages lying tucked away in the South Wales valleys, a huddle of anonymous terraced houses of uniform ugliness, unrelieved except for chapel and pub. Its heart was the coal pit, and its environment like the others, the debris of a slowly exhausting industry, a disused canal, some decaying rail tracks, a river black as the Styx, a river in Greek mythology that was supposed to separate the world of the living from the world of the dead. A general coating of grime over roofs and gardens, and the hills above blistered with a century of mining waste. Such villages learned to accept a twilight world where most of the menfolk worked down the pits. Many died early with their lungs full of coal dust, and the life was traditionally grim and perilous. Disaster, in fact, was about the only news that ever came out of the valleys. The sudden explosion underground, miners entombed alive, or the silent death in the dark from gas. Wales and the world were long hardened to such news, but not to what happened in Aberfan. So let's take a look back at that question 1. Okay, lines 1 to 21, this is a true or false. Okay, if it's true, you would fill in the box. If it's false, you leave it blank. Okay, so Aberfan was a well-known place in Wales. It says right in the first line, few people had ever heard of it until disaster struck it. So no, it wasn't very well known. The village did not have a chapel or pub. A huddle of anonymous terraced houses of uniform ugliness, unrelieved except for chapel and pub. Well, there, what that means is that it has got a chapel and a pub. Everything else is, you know, hideously, all of the other houses, all of the other things there, hideously ugly. Okay, so we've got our first one that we would fill in. You might ask me, Charlotte, how are you expecting us to be able to fill these in? It's on a video. Well, I would like you maybe to note down the 3 other, and that is how easily you can make a mistake while you're chatting. Oh my word, it wasn't a well-known place in Wales. It's false that it didn't have a chapel or a pub. It did have a chapel or a pub, so I'm leaving that blank. Okay, so I want you to read through these 6. Okay, read back through this, and then maybe write down what are the 4 that you think are true.